Open your mind to the way, the conscious way, the way of conscious mindfulness. Podcast with me, Sifu Boggie. Sifu means guide, muse, somebody who points you along the way, who guides you on your path. Boggie is my martial art, my spiritual and my healing name, and it means the balance between the chaos and the calmness. And for the last 39 years, I have been studying the Daoist arts. The Dao means the way, the path, the balance. And there are many different techniques and many different philosophies like Tai Chi, Qigong, Tit Ta, Tui Na, reflexology, acupressure, Chinese massage, and many other techniques. And I, as I said, been studying for the last 39 years. And my aim and my goal is to help people reduce and relieve their chronic pain, their anxiety, their stress, and help healers, light workers and coaches supercharge themselves and ensure they never burn out. And this Saturday show is Sit Down with Sifu on a Saturday. Hello, Saturday. And this show is all about the Tao, the way, the path, the balance. And this show in particular is about a form of Daoist, a style of Daoist, which is called the DragonDog Shaman. Now, the DragonDog Shaman are very hard to find information about. A lot of the time on Wikipedia and whatnot, you'll find about shaman, Daoist shaman, but the DragonDog Shaman were a particular type of shaman, a particular type of Daoist. Now, in the Forbidden Temple, you'll actually find what is normally in the West called Foo Dogs. So the Foo Dogs or lion dogs are a particular statue, and they have a ball under the foot. But if you're in the West, especially in the UK, you see lions, and you'll see statues with lions, and the lion looks a certain way. And when you look at these lions, and especially if you go to a Chinese New Year celebration, you'll see the dragon being celebrated. There'll be a group of people doing the dragon dance, and you'll see the dragon's head, and then you'll see these lion dog dances, where it's normally one person dressed up in a suit, being the lion dog and doing the lion dog dance. But when you look at the face, it's not the face of a lion. It looks really similar to a dragon's face. And for what my Sifus told me is that when people from the West came to China and saw them, for them it looked like the head of a lion. And one of the reasons that they believed this was because the statues, the head of the statue looked like fur. Now, in the West, we see dragons as being like reptilian, as having scales. But in the East, dragons had fur. Dragons were actually furry. And there's actually a movie coming out on Disney where they actually have the last dragon, and the dragon is furry. The dragon actually has hair, has fur. So this dragon, the dragon dogs, or my teachers would say they're not lions there, but we called them lions because that's what a lot of people in the West called them. A little bit like the word kung fu. In the West, we think kung fu means martial art, but kung fu actually means sporting activity. So American football or soccer is a kung fu. Table tennis is a kung fu. Anything, that's a sporting activity is technically a kung fu. So where they would say the martial arts is a sporting activity. It's an physical activity. So that's why the word kung fu was used. But we saw it. Kung Fu is martial arts, so it's a little bit same with these dragon dogs. Is that it would actually be longa, long meaning dragon, nga meaning dog, and so the dragon dogs, they were seen in the Forbidden Temple and actually different places in China and at some of the pyramids in China. Yes, there's pyramids in China. Uh, you're not told about them much, but they do exist. If you can actually Google them. But there are pyramids in China, both Egyptian style and Mayan style, and some of these pyramids have dragon dogs at the front entrance, at the entrance of the pyramids, and these dragon dogs are seen as guardians, protectors, and they protect. They protect the temples, but they also protect the portals, the energy gates that some of these places are said to have. And at the Forbidden Temple, they had the dragon dogs to protect the emperor. Now, underneath the dragon dog's paw, there you have one. You normally have dragon dogs are normally in pairs. There's normally two of them, so like two guards at the gate. They sort of work in tandem, and one would have a ball of sorts under their foot, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the other one tended to have a small baby dragon, a small baby dragon dog underneath their foot. So one dragon dog on one side would have a small version of themselves, a small little pup, a dog pup. And on the other side, the other dragon would have this ball. But when you look at the ones in China, it's not actually a ball of sorts. It is actually a 3D representation of the flower of life. So the flower of life is 64 circles or spheres. Actually, we see it in 2D, we see the picture 64 circles of the flower of life. But in actual fact, a lot of these ancient pictures aren't 2D. They're meant to be 3D. They are actually a solid form, or they have structure. So the flower of life is actually 64 circles. And this circle is 64 circles encased in a circle itself, encased in a ball. So when you look at the flower of life, you normally see it with a circle or a double circle around the outside. And that circle represents a philosophy, a technique called a system called Wu Qi, which is unlimited possibility. We'll talk about that more another time. But that circle encases the flower of life. And there's actually 64 circles within that. And so those 64 circles would actually become like a weird circular square because they're all interconnected. And they become sort of like a circular square or circular cube. So the flower of life is under one of the dragon dog's paws, and that's because the dragon dogs were said to be actual beings that came from the Stargate, our sun. So according to the ancient Chinese knowledge, that our sun is actually a Stargate. It's a portal for beings to travel through, and the dragon dogs were one, not the only ones, one of the beings that came to China. And the dragon dogs brought the sacred geometry. They brought the flower of life, which is the foundations to sacred geometry. They brought this information. Now, sacred geometry, the flower of life, you can find that symbol itself is within seeds. You can find it in a sunflower. You can find it in many different things. And within the flower of life, there is actually the Vesica Pisces. There's other shapes, other symbols within that. The flower of life is also considered the divine feminine. It is considered part of Kuan Yin, which again we'll talk about in another podcast. But the flower of life also has an opposite, a complementary opposite. So within those circles, there is actually triangles or pyramids, and there is 64 pyramids, which becomes Metatron's cube, or a version of the Merkaba or Merkaba, which again we'll talk about in another podcast. So the dragon dog is the guardian, is the galactic guardian. They were said to be the guardians of sacred geometry, the sacred knowledge. They were also said to be guardians of the Tao, the way, the path, the knowledge, and the balance. So these beings, these dragon dogs, were said to have existed, and these statues were made in honor of them. Now, from this came the DragonDog Shaman. So very much like certain information that somebody brought this information, and then people would then keep that information and pass it from generation to generation. So the DragonDog Shaman are the keepers of this knowledge of sacred geometry. They are shaman. They live this information. They live by this information. So they more than just know it. They don't just preach it. They actually live it. So the DragonDog Shaman, a little bit like the Barefoot Doctors, were known to be very much nomadic, and they went from place to place. DragonDog Shaman were also, like the Barefoot Doctors, which we talked about last week, were very much healers. They actually helped people, but they did use massage to a degree, and they used physical techniques and like Qigong and maybe some herbal stuff, but they were far more into energy work. So they would work more on the energy side of a person rather than the physical side of a person. So they tended to do things in an energy way. Now, the dragon dogs are quite interesting, or from the knowledge I learned from my Sifus, the dragon dog shaman are very interesting, where the Barefoot Doctors are sort of like spiritual doctors, sort of like spiritual scientists to a degree. They very much believed in there's different ways to fix people. There's many, many different ways, and there's many different systems that can help that person. Where the Dragon Dog Shaman, they were more like a Daoist quantum physicist. They very much believed in the chaos theory. They very much believed in the flow of energy. And their philosophy, their main philosophy, apart from sacred geometry, was the three ones. Now, the three ones is a big subject. There's lots of different variants within this three ones philosophy. But basically, the three ones is about Qi, physical vitality, so Qi, short sounding word Qi, physical vitality, Jing, emotional vitality, and Shen, spiritual vitality. So these were three energies, three primal energies of the universe. There are many, many energies, but these three energies exist in everything. So Qi, the physical energy, physical vitality, is very much the structure. So, your physical body, or, an exercise. So if you're talking about Qigong, there would be the physical exercise, the actual structure of that exercise would be the Qi. The Jing would be the emotional side, so the feelings behind it, or the things that make up that exercise, the foundations of that thing. And then the Shen would be the spirit of the exercise. So it would be the overriding goal of that exercise. Or for a person, the Qi is your physical body and your physical health. The Jing is your emotional health, and the Shen would be your spiritual health, your spiritual vitality, your spiritual well-being. And they very much believed you had the three. You needed to balance the three. Now, a lot of people, there's a symbol, and a lot of people call it the yin-yang symbol. It is actually, its actual name is Tai Chi. Now, this symbol is a circle, and there is normally a black part and a white part. And in the black part, there's a little white dot, and in the white part, there's a little black dot. Now, this circle, as I said, its name taught to me was Tai Chi, because it is the balance of the yin and the yang. Now, these topics, these subjects, we'll talk about in another episode of Sit Down with Sifu. But there is another one of these symbols where this symbol has only two of these. It has two of these, sort of like, almost like fish heads. Like there's a big round bit, and then there's a tail. Now, this one is called Tai Chi, but there's another one called the Three Ones, which has three of them. Now, if you actually look on the podcast and you look at the symbol of the show, you'll see this three-sided version, these three little fish tails all grouped together in a circle, and they are called the Three Ones. Now, this 3-1 symbol means different things. You have the three virtues, the three vitalities, the three treasures. Because in Daoism, there's lots of different Daos, there's lots of different ways, there's lots of different paths. So the three was a big subject, but the 3 ones was about this concept, these three concepts. So this concept of the feminine, the masculine, and the sacred child is one of these concepts. The concept of the Qi, physical vitality, the Jing, emotional vitality, the Shen, spiritual vitality. Again, that's another one of these concepts. And there's different variants of this. But for a DragonDog Shaman, all of these variations, all of these variants of the three were very important. That they believed that even the Tai Chi symbol itself, that white fish with a black dot or black eye and the black fish with a white dot or white eye, there was a third component, but you don't see it in that symbol. But there is the silver mist, the thing that balances it, connects it all together and keeps it balanced. But this is a different sort of balance to the Western word, the balance. It's not a flat line. It's actually more like a wave. It's something that flows and moves. And in actual fact, when you meditate on these symbols, they would know when you truly get it, when you actually no longer saw it as a 2D image, you actually saw it as a sphere, as a 3D image, and you also saw it moving and turning in on itself. So even the 3-1 symbol, which is 3 of those fish heads, of sorts of those little fishes, it looks a bit like a fish, sort of. Those 3 would be moving around. They would go one way and then they sort of turn in on themselves and go the other way. So this concept of the 3 ones is all about the balance between the mind, the body, and the spirit. And the DragonDog Shaman especially believed if you focused too much on the physical side and not enough on the emotional and spiritual side, you would become too out of balance. You become too physical. You become too much like an animal. You'd be too raw, too much animalistic. But if you work too much on the emotional side, you would be overwhelmed with emotions, and it could either anger or sadness or something in between. If you were too spiritual, you would lose that connection with physical reality, and you would lose that emotional connection as well. So the balance between the mind, body, and spirit, especially for a DragonDog Shaman, was vitally important. So, and similar to in what's called Chan Buddhism or Chinese Zen Buddhism, the Shaolin monks were Chan Buddhists, which is Chinese Zen. And the Chinese monks originally, they were very spiritual, but their bodies become very unfit. A lot of them were quite fat, and they're very unhealthy. They meditated a lot and very spiritual, but they lost their physical strength and capability. And a Buddhist, a monk from India called Buddharama came to China and actually said, "Oh, you guys, you are not balanced. You need to balance yourself." So he taught them yoga. And from that yoga, he told them to go out into nature and find new exercises to help find their way, their own personal Tao. And this is where Shaolin Kung Fu comes from, is that these different healing techniques help actually learn to help the mind, body, and spirit. And from these three ones, you actually get a thing called the three M's, which we'll talk about another time. But it's actually, when we talk about martial arts in the West, we see martial arts as fighting. But in the East, martial arts is personal development. It's actually about developing the mind, the body, and the spirit. And fighting is just one benefit of doing that system. It's actually meant to be a healing system, a spiritual system, and a fitness or defense system. This is what martial arts is about. But again, we'll talk about that another time. So the DragonDog Shaman were very much about balancing the physical side, the emotional side, and the spiritual side. For them, all of these were very important, not just one. So the DragonDog Shaman would go from place to place, and they would help people and teach people, but more importantly, they would teach those people how to help themselves. Because again, the Daoist path is a personal thing. It's about your personal development. So rather than preaching and rather than telling people you should do this or you should do that, they would show people through their own abilities that this is a way, this is a path. It's not the only path, but it is a path. So the Daoist shaman also saw everything as energy. This is where I say about the quantum physics, that they were very much like Daoist quantum physicists. They very much saw everything in the universe as energy. So not just life, not just plants, not just animals, not just humans, but everything. The chair you're sitting on, the ground underneath your feet, the clothes that you're wearing, the computer that you're listening or watching this on. Everything is energy. Everything is made from energy. And they also said everything is conscious energy, which actually within quantum physics, there are scientists that have actually done experiments, and they say that atoms themselves have a form of consciousness, which has sort of freaked them out a little bit, because when they tried to split the atom, they were actually starting to say that atoms seem to be aware, they seem to be trying to move out the way. So within the Daoist, the DragonDog theory and the Daoist theory, that everything is conscious and everything is energy. Everything is aware. So in essence, the actual name of the podcast, The Way of Conscious Mindfulness, is that the universe is conscious. It is actually aware. And the goal is not only to be conscious, but to be mindful of your consciousness, to be aware that you are, and everything is energy, and everything is conscious energy. And we're all connected, which quantum physics is actually known. There is a thing called the field, which is this energy that connects everything. Everything, living or not, is all interconnected. Everything is connected energetically to each other and to everything else. And it's called, in quantum physics, it is called the field. Now, in Daoism, they seem to know this already. And as a kid, growing up, learning about the DragonDog Shaman, especially, and also the Barefoot Doctors and the Cloud Whisperers, it would blow my mind that, like hearing all these stories and learning this stuff was amazing. But then when I started to study quantum physics, it was like, hold up, these guys from 2,000 years ago, or even more, such, the stories about the Barefoot Doctors being maybe even 10,000 years old, depending who you talk to. These people, they knew stuff that science is talking about now. And how is that possible? How is that feasible? It's like, for example, one of the things the DragonDog Shaman would say is that this stargate, that our sun is a stargate, and they would talk. There's a knowledge, like a menren, which means inside the door information, sort of like a secret. And the menren information on the sun is that it is a wuchi Dao. So wuchi means unlimited possibilities, and the wuchi Dao is the unlimited way. And what they would say is that the sun is two energetic spheres, one spinning one way, one spinning the other way, and these two spheres are in the same dimensional space. They're sort of like rubbing against each other, but they're sort of like, two ghosts going past each other, but going through each other, and they're creating a friction. Now, the friction on the outside is creating yang, which is light, expansion, energy, which creates like the sun. And then in the inside is yin, which is darkness, contraction. But this, it actually forms a portal, a stargate. And they would say that the sun and every star was on the outside, it was yang energy. It was this unlimited energy, this unlimited light. And on the inside was this darkness, was this portal, this wormhole, this stargate, a doorway, a wormhole to somewhere else. Now, for a long, long time, you'd hear that and go, what do you mean, there's a stargate, there's a wormhole inside the sun? What nonsense. But it's an interesting fact. If you look up a scientist called Nissan Herriman, so Nissan Herriman is a physicist, and he was starting to look into the data of the sun. And he was coming up with some interesting facts. Now, when he looked at the data, that he was saying that there appeared to be a black hole in the center of the sun. That in the center of the sun there was actually a black hole, and rather than the theory is that certain stars get bigger and bigger, and then they collapse in on themselves, and they create black holes. What he actually was theorizing, that in every single star there's already a black hole, and when the star gets too old and it collapses, the black hole is shown. The black hole appears, but it's already there. Now, originally, they would, scientists were dismissing this and saying, this is rubbish. You don't know what you're talking about. Until quite recently, and only in the last 5 years or so, that the evidence now is coming forward a little bit more, that Nissan Herriman could be right, that there could actually be a black hole inside our own star. Which, when I started to hear this, like 10 years ago, it was blowing my mind, because hold up, the DragonDog Shaman, they've been talking about black holes in stars for decades, for centuries, for maybe millennia, and it was very much of a mind-blowing thing for me to realize that this ancient knowledge, these people and their ancient ways, this information that's supposed to be, it's just made up, they're making up stories. It could actually be real. They were actually forecasting information that is now coming to light. So the DragonDog Shaman, as I said, they're sort of like ancient Daoist quantum physicists. They very much were shaman. They were very much shamanic. They went from place to place. They lived the information. They breathed it. They were connected with it. They very much believed that everything was energy. Everything was conscious energy. So not just the animals, not just the plants, not just us, but the table, the rock, the earth, the water, the sky, your clothes, everything is energy. Everything is conscious energy. And their understanding of this is so everything had information. Everything is a form of frequency, a form of knowledge. So you could actually communicate with the rock. You could communicate with the tree. You could communicate with the animals. You could communicate with the stars, the sky. Everything was talking. And now in the Taoist philosophy, in general, they say everything is your Sifu, your guide, your muse. And especially for the DragonDog Shaman, they very strongly believed that everything was conscious and everything could communicate with you and still can. That, you can gain information from everything, that the universe talks to you all the time, that the stars are conscious, the planets are conscious, everything is conscious and is aware and can communicate with everything else. So for the DragonDog Shaman, this knowledge, this information was how they grew and how they helped each other and how they expanded their knowledge. And again, in Daoism in general, but especially with the DragonDog Shaman, they believed that there is no limit to your understanding. There is no limit to your energy, to your health. They actually talk within Taoism that there is a talk that the average Taoist lived for over 250 years. Now, for a lot of people, that sounds like nonsense, but when you actually look back in other countries and to other religious texts where they talk about people being 500 years old, 1,000 years old, and even within our DNA, it is said they actually said that our DNA we actually should have a lifespan of 120 years. There were certain scientists, medical scientists, that were actually saying, in actual fact, it was more like 250 to 500 years, but they thought it was too extreme. So they said publicly, it's only about 120 years. So there's this interesting concept that within certain, certain science, certain information, they're sort of saying that our DNA, our actual codons of our DNA are actually saying we could live for far longer than we do. Our average lifespan at the moment is 80 to 90 years, but they feel that we could live far longer. And there is a little bit of evidence out in China and certain places where there's said to be people who are easily 120 years old, or older. There are definitely stories of people who are supposed to be 200 years, 300 years old. And of course, modern man says, that's a myth. That can't be true. But, what if it is? What if there's actually more going on than, we actually know? And we're capable of far more. And very much within the Daoist culture, the DragonDog culture, they very much believe that you can control your body, not the other way around. The Daoists would say, do not let the body be your prison. This is just a shell. This is a suit we wear. This is a vehicle for us to travel now, but we go from place to place, meaning that they very much believed, like a lot of philosophies and a lot of religions, that reincarnation exists, that they very much went from one life to the next, that our consciousness was very much a flowing energy, very much a free spirit, that when it leaves this body, it is, in essence, they would say it's like a sphere, because a sphere is unlimited. The circle, the Wu Qi, which is a symbol, a Chinese symbol, and use a lot of Chinese and Japanese artwork, draw the circle. And they're very fascinated with the circle, because the circle the Wu Qi is actually a sphere, and it means unlimited possibility, unlimited potential. And as this sphere, it can shift its shape, it can move and expand. There is no limit to how much it can grow. And all consciousness, rather than the word soul, the soul comes from the Latin word which means body of breath. So it's your body and breath that you're encased in. But consciousness is actually this pure, unlimited energy. And within the Daoist philosophy, they very much believe that we are unlimited consciousness, that we use this body, this shell, this vehicle for now. But when we leave it, we can expand far more. And the Daoist philosophy was very much, and especially the DragonDogs, was very much, there is no limit to your consciousness. There is no limit to your expansion of energy. You know, we think, we have a limited time frame, and we think we have a limited amount of energy, and we can only do a limited amount of things. But for them, there is no limit. If you believe there is no limit, what you believe is true. And, you know, this is within quantum physics. They say that the observer affects the experiment, that what you observe, what you're focusing on, is what you affect. And this is why, within science, this is why we have blind and double-blind case studies, because when somebody knows what the experiment is, they seem to be able to affect the experiment. And there's actually been experiments with the FBI with 2,000 people meditating in a state, in the city state of in Washington, that they had 2,000 people meditating, and the crime rate dropped around about 20%. And there was another experiment where they did 7,000 people worldwide meditating, and they dropped the acts of crime and terror worldwide by over 70% or more. So, you know, there is a very strange thing within this reality, within this universe, where our own perception, our own consciousness can actually affect reality. Now, within that, there is a thing where there's the wonderful Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza, very much the forefathers of epigenetics. And they very much, in epigenetics, your belief can affect your reality. So it actually affects your physical body. So if you're in fear and in negativity, you're actually more likely to get ill. You're more likely for your body to deteriorate. But if you focus on positivity and you focus on, I can do this, it's easy for me to do this, you can actually more likely create things. Even in psychology, we know that the mind can't tell the difference between what we imagine and what is real. So you can imagine certain things, and you focus enough intention on that imagination, you create it, you make it happen. And in science, what they did, they actually had sports people, and they had the sports people focus on sitting down in a chair, but they focused on if they were runners. They focused on, you're going to go for a run and you're going to do your run. And we want you to imagine that you're setting yourself up for your run, and then you're running. And their heart rate would increase. Their muscles would actually start to flex, because they'd have detectors on them, and the muscles would start to flex. And their temperature would increase, like they were actually running. So they actually know that the body can't tell the difference between what you imagine and what is actually real. So this whole thing of the DragonDog Shaman, they very much believed that everything is energy, everything is conscious energy, and that what was really important was the physical reality, or physical vitality, Qi, emotional vitality, Jing, and spiritual vitality, Shen. Now, these three energies are actually stored in three power stations in the body, or sort of like cells, like energetic cells. and they are called dantians, which actually translates as a cinnabar field. So it's a field of a cinnabar, a field of energies, a collection of like an elixir. And the whole idea that these dantians, they would store these three different energies. Now, within this, I know that there's a few different variations. Some people say that Qi is stored in the lower dantian, which is at the belly button level. Jing is stored in the middle dantian, heart level, and Shen is stored in the top dantian. But there are some people who actually say no, Qi is stored in the middle dantian, the heart level, and Jing is stored in the bottom. Now, for me, my teachers very much said that Qi was in the belly. So you can have a belly of Qi, an ocean of Qi in your belly. And that's why the belly could expand. And this is why Buddha is said to have a big belly, because his belly was full of Qi, full of physical vitality, which kept him physically strong and maintained him. Then Buddha would have, the Chinese Buddha had big moves. He was a man, but had big breasts. And that was the emotional vitality, the Jing. So he's full of love, full of unconditional love, or it could be cultivated into unconditional love. And then when you looked at Buddha's ears, the Chinese Buddha's ears, he had these big earlobes, these huge earlobes. And this was said to indicate that he was full of Shen, spiritual vitality. So it was just not like awareness, but it was the spiritual abilities and beyond. He could connect and communicate with the universe. So this Qi, this Jing, and this Shen is very important, and it is stored within these dantians. Now, according to the ancient knowledge, according to the DragonDog Shaman, there were more than one energy system. A lot of people talk about the chakras. Some people talk about the auras. Some people talk about the meridians. Some people talk about the dantians. Some people talk about the Merkaba. Some people talk about the Torah field, or the flower of life, which indicates the Torah field. According to the DragonDog Shaman, according to the ancient Daoist, but according to the ancient knowledge in general, I've had teachers from different places, I've been to different places, and in Tibet, even in Judaism, in India, with some of the yogis, they would talk about the ancient knowledge, and they would talk about these ancient systems, and it was sometimes called the five spirits. The five spirits were the five spirits were the five spirits were the meridians, the chakras, the auras, the Merkaba, the Torah field or Tiridial field, and there was a sixth one which binded them together, which was the dantians. But that is again for another time. So this was about the DragonDog Shaman, who were like mystical, spiritual quantum physicists. And they helped people more in an energetic way, but they very much believed in the balance between the mind, the body, and the spirit. Now, there is a lot more I could talk about, and I'm very good at talking for a long time, but I think for now, this is a good time to end. So if you're interested, if you're interested in something, you'd like to ask me a question and maybe even be a guest and ask me these questions on this podcast, why not contact me through one of a few ways? You can find me on YouTube under Sifu Boggie. You can find me on Instagram under Sifu.Boggie. You can find me on Facebook under The Way of Conscious Mindfulness fan page. And you'll find me on Linktree. And I also have a thing called Discord, a Discord community called Sifu Boggie's Chi Tribe. And we are all about learning different ways, learning from each other and growing with each other. And on there is about Qigong, there is about energy work, there's about the DragonDog Shaman, about the Barefoot Doctors. But there's also about, we will talk about the tarot cards, we talk about the I Ching, we talk about many different things. And that is the Chi tribe community. But also part of that is the next step on is actually the Shun Dao school, the family system that I teach. And you can also find that on Patreon under Patreon. So www.patreon.com/Sifu Boggie. And on the Patreon school, there are different levels of teaching. We have Qi time, which is a basic Qigong warm-ups and a system of Qigong called Bar Duan Jin, 8-piece brocade. We also have the Cup of Qi, which is more of the students' class where we learn about the meridians, the chakras, yours. We learn about different Qigongs for different ailments and injuries. And eventually, if you want to, you can actually end up becoming Sifu yourself through that school. And then you also have the DragonDog Shaman level, where you learn about the different energy systems. You learn about the Chinese Reiki, Shun Qi Shen, and you learn about the different DragonDog Qigongs. There's actually a DragonDog Qigong set as well. So on Patreon, you'll find these different levels, these different levels of class, and they're all monthly paid classes. With a weekly class, it's monthly paid, and you can stay for as long as you need to, as long as you want. You pay each month, but if after a month you want to leave, you can do so. You're not under a contract. So if that interests you, you'll find the information down below on this podcast, or like I said, look up on Instagram, on YouTube, or on Facebook. And for now, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's inspired you in some way. And so for now, take care. Love, Chi, and Jen, Sifu Boggie. And remember, open up your mind to the way, the conscious way, the way of conscious mindfulness.